You're listening in on an animated discussion about Batman the Animated Series with two experts in their fields. I'm Joshua Unruh, superhero scholar.
And I'm Caleb Masters, your friendly neighborhood film critic extraordinaire from thecinematropolis.com. And today's topic is Season 2, Episodes 10 and 11, Heart of Steel.
All right, Caleb, let's dive into this title card because I kind of feel like it's a metaphor for this entire two-parter.
I agree. You know how 2 episodes ago when I said about Night of the Ninja, this is how I feel about the episode? Same here.
Yeah. It's really bad.
It's not good.
This title card is terrible.
I was just going to say this title card kind of sucks.
It's really bad. For one thing, you don't know what Hardak is until way into the show. And then the font choice is basically like that spray paint stencil sort of military style.
Right.
What does that have to do with anything? It's not good. It is not good.
Hey, man, those electrical beams on top look kind of neat.
No. No.
I'm looking for a silver lining here, Joshua. Okay, so let's just go ahead and say it. This episode is not very good.
These episodes are not very good.
I don't understand why this is a two-parter.
100%.
I hardly understand why this is an episode. It just feels like they needed something to plug. They needed 2 episodes. They had like a schedule, and then we got 2 more episodes to fill on this contract. And they're like, what if we did a robots take over Gotham story? And they phoned it in hard the whole time with a couple of notable exceptions.
Dear listener, you may be wondering why we wanted to cover this episode at all then. We'll tell you. Her name is Barbara Gordon.
Yeah.
Now, there's some other stuff along the way that's fun and clever, especially for the film nerd in the room.
Yeah.
But pretty much we covered these episodes because Barbara Gordon is in them.
Yes. And you know what? I'll talk about the thing I like. Some of the style, which is weird because I felt like some of the episodes that we've talked about recently didn't have as much style.
Mm-hmm.
This one, weirdly, and it's not consistently, but there are moments that feel like they're tapping into Alfred Hitchcock.
Sure.
The way they frame the car driving up the hill, the woman in the car, the blowing
that we
wind,
get this
blonde.
background. Yeah, she's a very Hitchcock style of main female
lead
character.
woman.
Yeah.
The music at times when she's on those car sequences sounds like it's out of Vertigo.
Yeah, one I thought of in the first part that feels very Hitchcock to me is when Bruce Wayne calls home, and it's right after she's attacked Alfred, and we get a close-up of the phone, and then the camera shifts.
Yes.
And it's Alfred's legs being dragged away.
Yes.
That's what we get from
Very
it.
Hitchcock.
Yeah. That stuff was really interesting and stylish and just felt wasted on this episode. All of this very Hitchcockian shooting of this female lead for a surprise that failed to surprise anybody?
Joshua, let's be real. Was the reveal of Randa supposed to be a reveal? Was that supposed to be a surprise?
Yes, clearly. That's why we get all of this from behind. We hear her say, I think, 2 words, the entire time, like home and intruder rectify or something. Like that's all we get from behind. And then when we first are introduced to her from front, her hair is covered. The only thing that could tip us off that it's Randa. Obviously, they wanted it to be a big reveal. I don't know why. I can't figure it out.
2 things. 1, I don't know why, and 2, it's not.
It didn't work.
It's super obvious.
We knew.
Okay.
She's the only
She's the only female character in the show.
Yeah.
And she steals. It's very clear that she's tied to the thefts of the data. Like she drops the suitcase off, and then there's other female character working for the big robot who, oh my gosh, she's a bad robot. Okay.
Yeah, it's not great.
It's
so we'll
strange.
say, here's the interesting tidbits before we talk about the parts we actually liked. Okay, interesting tidbit. An AI story in 1993.
Yeah, no, this is great. In the history of fiction, this lands at a very fascinating point in pop culture where we're talking about AI. Because it does seem more relevant today. The idea of stealing data
is
25
really cool. Years too early.
Yeah.
I don't understand this episode's being created at all then. And now it'd be super topical. Not so much the robot side, but the AI side, and as you say, the data theft.
It's so strange. Like the themes that we're talking about with AI today, but as imagined in the 90s. So it looks a lot
so
different.
There's a bunch of robots and okay, but there are a bunch of robots, but the other thing that we like, you especially like, another style moment. Why is Hardak so big? Why does it look the way that it looks? And the only answer is...
Hal. Would that be from 2001: A Space Odyssey? The big glowing eye.
Big glowing red eye.
And also Fritz Lang's Metropolis.
Yes.
Fritz Lang being a German director. This is a silent film from Germany. I think it was 1927. Like the original robot movie.
Yeah, yeah. That's why things look the way that they look. Now, a lot of times, though, just like we've talked before, those styles are kind of like slammed up against the animated series style to greater and lesser success, right? Hardak himself, I still don't understand why in 1993 he has to be as big as a football field, but it's because everything's huge in Metropolis or made to look that way. The trash can robot, once it transforms into the robot, looks like it could have walked off of Metropolis.
Yes, absolutely. The trash can robot especially.
But the duplicate robots, they look like really crappy animated series robots.
Very crappy, generic, and not even like T1000, not even like T800 inspired, which is a shame.
Now, the other stuff that I think we like are the nods. Again, we're going to get to Barbara, but the other stuff we like are the nods to other pieces of fiction, right? I'm sure that you recognized one of our guest actors in this episode.
Well, Joshua, yes, absolutely. We get a nice, very clever nod. This episode's not very clever, but it is clever with the casting because we get William Sanderson, that is one of the stars of Blade Runner, a classic and very influential science fiction film about AI and robots, or and Blade Runner they're referred to as replicants.
Yes, which we're nodded at with duplicants. Okay, great. That's fine. The one I like, I agree with you. That was a really cool casting choice. Mm-hmm. Although, if I'm going to be kind of cynical about it, making me think about Blade Runner, which handles this really deftly and cleverly, kind of throws a spotlight on how
not clever this
deftly
is.
or cleverly this is handled. Now, I had one that's a little bit of a deeper cut. That is just, again, it's just a clever nod. It doesn't make the episode better, but it's kind of fun. And that is that William Sanderson's character is named Rossum. Rossum is a reference to the titular character from a 1921 Czech play called Rossum's Universal Robots. It is famous because that is the origination of the term robot.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a deep cut.
Now, I happened to have looked that up. I happened to have that like top of mind for another piece of fiction I was working on, but I was like, hey, I appreciate that.
It's a nice nod.
I wish that the rest of the episode were as clever as these two choices, this casting choice and this naming choice.
Well, what's interesting about this, too, is they wrote this before the internet was a thing. So that's, that's clever that they worked that wordplay in there. They had pulled open the old encyclopedia probably or just happened to know it.
Yes, somebody knew that, right? Yeah. That's cool. Yes, that is impressive. I approve. That's why I'm saying I wish the rest of it were as clever. Frankly, I wish every character in this episode was as clever as Barbara Gordon turns out to be.
Yeah.
And I wish the ideas in this episode were as clever as, hey, let's get Sanderson to play this vaguely J.F. Sebastian type character.
Vaguely, yeah.
And let's also do these Hitchcockian things, and let's also nod at Fritz Lang's Metropolis, and just all of these style pieces just come together into not a great
nothing.
package.
It feels like, because you're right, there you can see the attempt to do cool things in it. It's like they were going for a mystery about this mystery woman, and you chase her to find out, oh my God, she's a robot. But the way they deliver the information, it's like, of course that's what, it's very obvious. All of it's very...
In a Hitchcock movie, there would be someone in the fiction also trying to figure out who that woman was.
Yes, exactly.
And we would be shocked to discover that it was the love interest later. None of that happened. Anyway,
No.
Okay. All right. This is probably going to be our shortest discussion of a two-parter ever. But are we ready, I think,
Let's
to
talk about the
transition?
thing...
Let's talk about the good thing.
By that, Barbara. You've already talked about it. Barbara Gordon. And this is her introduction. What a weird episode to be introduced in.
It is a very weird episode to be introduced in, except for how well it serves her.
Yes.
Like, I sort of wonder if they built an episode that was meant to be just okay, except it serves Barbara Gordon really well. We put Commissioner Gordon in a position of peril in a way that only someone very close to him would notice. She is able to show herself very, hard charging and capable and something of a detective already.
Right.
She fires up the bats. I mean, she is so good in this episode and is so much the only good thing in this episode that it's like, did you build a two-parter to support Barbara?
I don't know, man.
No,
I don't think so.
I'm probably giving him too much
I don't
credit.
think so, and I don't think you need to. It's still not good writing because I don't think she needs a two-parter to do
No.
that. But yes, she does. She demonstrates that she's smart, she's sly, she's clever. We see her use
implacable, just unstoppable.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm going to get this done.
Yes.
It's so good.
we see her use the bat grappling gun.
Right, right.
Which was a nice little bit of foreshadowing there.
Oh, that's right. In case you don't know, dear listener, Barbara Gordon is Batgirl. Or
What?
in the case of BTAS, will be Batgirl. So,
What?
yeah. Yeah, so she uses the bat grapple. That's great. She sets off the bat signal. That's great.
That's cool.
Big foreshadowing. I love the moment when she gets everybody out to the truck and she turns around and they're like, where are you going? And she says, I'm going to help Batman.
Yes.
Like, it's the most obvious thing in the world that this college student
Yeah.
is going to turn around and run back into the burning
That's how
building.
determined she is. She's like, yeah, well, I'm going to help Batman because why not? Because I can. The performance is great. Of course, we love the design. I think Barbara Gordon's exceptional in this episode, and it does demonstrate all of the things we will come to like about her.
Absolutely.
And like a more primitive or earlier context.
I do appreciate that they're playing a little bit of the long game, that they don't introduce Barbara in the same episode that she becomes Batgirl.
I agree.
We lay a little bit of
Wholeheartedly
track.
agree.
That's great.
Which is better than what they did with Robin. We've talked about we get Robin's reckoning way after because Robin's already made an appearance or
Yeah.
2 or 3,
Yeah.
and it's never explained like who he is or where he came from. He's just there. And they're taking a much different approach with Barbara. It's like, hey, here she is. And the same way they set up Two-Face, here
Yeah.
she is. Down the road, we'll introduce Batgirl.
I actually think, now don't hold me to this, but I'm pretty sure that we also see her as a classmate of Dick's.
Yes.
Before she becomes Batgirl.
Yes.
Or that's mixed into when she becomes Batgirl. But again, this track is laid. She is the best part of these 2 episodes. I don't know if we'll cover it, but we do see the duplicate stuff surface in a future episode. Robot Batman shows up.
Is there a sequel to this episode?
Yes.
Oh my god.
We're probably not gonna talk about it. But Barbara's great. Would you be interested in a little bit of comic book nonsense involving Barbara Gordon?
Well, Joshua, I'm always ready for some comic book nonsense with Barbara Gordon.
So she's really fun for me because before this, the most famous representation of her on the small screen was on the 66 Batman show. Yvonne Craig very famously played Barbara Gordon and Batgirl. She was a 3rd season addition to the show in an effort to kind of goose the ratings. They had kind of fallen from their meteoric rise. They had fallen just as precipitously by the 3rd season. They were running out of money. They were like, what can we do? Let's try and bring in some women viewers and also maybe give the boys that are a couple of years older than when they started watching the show someone to watch, And what's fascinating is there had been a Bat-girl running around the Batman books in the 50s. She has no relationship to Barbara Gordon.
Not at all.
And they were actually, Carmine Infantino was who was drawing a lot of the Batman comics at the time, and his pop art approach to a lot of it is how that happened on the TV show. He was starting to work on the preliminary sketches of how this new Batgirl they were going to introduce would look, but all he had was the look, no character stuff. William Dozier, the producer of the show, wanders through, sees these, and is like, I want this person on my show, develop her, create the character. And that's when they start thinking, well, we've got to tie her into the existing mythology, right? Let's make her Jim Gordon's daughter. All that was done before she was on the show, and then she makes a very narrow, it's close, but she's on the show before she debuts in the comic books.
That's a
But it's
great
close.
pull.
It's
Wow.
close.
So 66 Batman before comic book debut.
Yeah. And again, it's so closely tied together. The development of her in the comics and in the show, they're pretty different usages, but the comics were pretty different than the show by that point. That couple of years was a big couple of years for Batman comics. But the development of this character is so tightly woven that it's a horse race. But I think the show edges it out.
That's a cool little piece of trivia. Save that one for trivia night because I feel like that one's going to come back. That Batgirl's first appearance was actually in 66 Batman before the comics.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating.
Now, more fun trivia that I just really enjoyed this bit. The title of the comic book in which she debuted is very on the nose. The $1 Million Debut of Batgirl.
Wow. I wonder if they're introducing a new character.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And one fun thing from this episode. So, things were a little less enlightened, obviously, as far as treatment of the ladies in the world at large, but especially in superhero comics in the 60s. Okay?
Agreed.
She had a purse. It had bat gadgets in it. They were sometimes themed towards girly things like makeup. Now, the Batwoman and Batgirl from the 50s did this way harder than they did with Barbara Gordon. They let it go off Barbara pretty quickly. But when she pulls out her compact in this episode and blows the dust of her actual real compact, she blows the makeup on the keypad to figure out what the code is.
Right.
I feel like this is a little bit of a nod, just a little bit of a nod to the brief moment that she pulled Bat Gadgets out of a big yellow purse.
I mean, it was a nice nod. It's she's resourceful, and it works better here because she's not Batgirl at the moment. She's
Absolutely
just Barbara
agree.
Gordon using the tools at her disposal.
Yeah. So we're going to see a lot more from Barbara Gordon in the show, and it's going to mostly be great.
Yes,
She's
most of it's great. They
fantastic.
do a great job with her. And I just don't have much to say about the episode. It's a very generic, hey, look, the robots want to replace the humans storyline. We've seen this dozens of times across television, across film. So there's not really, I don't really feel like it does anything interesting on that front. I think it's interesting because of when it got released, not that. But
and how much more sort of on point it would be now.
Right.
Feel
It's
like-
an interesting cultural artifact in that sense because it's, again, I think you're right. If we were to reimagine the things that we're thinking about today, but like in the way people in the 90s would think about it, it just manifests itself way differently.
Yeah, absolutely. But if this had been one episode where we just had a disgruntled engineer who was trying to replace people because he was sad about his daughter instead of accidentally creating a maniacal AI, one episode, we get it done in one episode, and it might be better for that, right? Like it's just a tighter
and that also
product.
reminds me, there's very loose motivations on why the guy even built the robot. Extremely. And they're like the most throwaway emotions that you've heard in every movie.
His daughter died in a car
accident because someone wasn't paying attention at the wheel.
Yeah.
So humans are fallible and not precise, so I should just build something that is, I don't know.
Telling your AI how sad you are and your AI deciding to make less fallible versions of humans, okay, but it's not 44 minutes of Batman the Animated Series.
The Sentinels storyline's great. The Sentinels, it's callbacks more X-Men on this episode. It's like the same thing. We're better than humans.
Yeah, and it's also tied more into the theme. Those robots aren't so much replacing as wanting to destroy mutants. It's on point for the thing. I don't know. I just don't know. I think we've bagged on these episodes and loved on Barbara Gordon as much as we need to.
Yes. So I'm glad we talked about this. I have no plans to ever rewatch this episode again unless I'm really looking at Batgirl really closely.
Let's say that to the listeners, though. If you are not familiar with Batman Animated Series, this is your first or in a long time.
Or maybe you missed this episode altogether. There's 2 part
them.
episodes. Yeah.
Watch them. But you're watching them for Barbara Gordon. She is going to be a huge deal as Batgirl. So if that's all news, tune in for these. If you know all that already, skip it.
Agreed. Well, Joshua, before we wrap up, let's go ahead and talk about some recommendations. And thankfully, there is absolutely no shortage of movies or books or comic books or video games about robots. So I'm going to go ahead and throw a couple out there. I've already mentioned Fritz Lang, 1927, Metropolis.
Yes, a masterpiece to this day.
Masterpiece to this day. It's actually a silent film, but just it's the power of visual storytelling is full on display. If you have any interest in studying film at all in any capacity, you must see Metropolis. I'm going to throw out The Stepford Wives. That's another really good classic one about men living in a society where they replace the women with robots. More recently, I looked at a lot of options because I feel like a lot of the recommendations are obvious. Terminator, very obvious. 2001, pretty obvious.
Yeah.
One that I'm not sure as many people have seen is 2015's Ex Machina from director Alex Garland. It's a great A+ movie. I think it was in my top 5 that year. It's phenomenal. Domhnall Gleeson goes out to this multimillionaire who's the CEO of this company, invites Domhnall Gleeson out to his house, and it turns out that he's there to have him conduct a Turing test on this android that he's keeping in his basement. but it's kind of feels like a high concept sci-fi until it's a horror movie. And then, have you seen this, Joshua?
I have not.
Oh, it's really good.
It's on the list.
And I think it's streaming on Amazon, if I remember correctly.
Fantastic.
So I highly recommend. That's, again, 2015's Ex Machina. It is one of my favorite movies on the subject of AI and recent memory.
Now, I'm going to go ahead and do the obvious one that you didn't take, just because it's always great. Blade Runner.
Oh, of course. Oh, we mentioned Blade Runner.
Just do it. Just watch Blade Runner.
Do it and watch the final cut.
Yes, watch the final cut. That is if you learned anything from this episode, it should be Barbara Gordon is great, and watch the final cut of Blade Runner.
Yeah, and it's specifically, again, for you listeners who are less acquainted, it is Blade Runner, the final cut.
The final
There's
cut.
a director's cut, not the director's cut, the final cut.
Now I'm going to go for a weirder poll, just for fun. Because listen, it's so obvious in this episode, I'm going to go way off the beaten track. Are you familiar with a film from 1987 called Cherry 2000?
You know, I've heard of it.
Yes.
I've heard of it.
It's kind of a cult fave.
I don't think I've seen it, but I have definitely, the name is ringing a bell.
What you have is a man with a fembot who caters to his every need and whim, and she breaks. There is a newer model. He does not like the newer model, and so he hires a tracker to take him into a forbidden desert area so that he can salvage the parts necessary for his Cherry 2000. And the tracker he hires is played by Melanie Griffith.
Wow.
Now look.
Into it.
I'm not going to tell you that this movie is great, but it is super fun. And it was a sort of HBO staple. Like, I saw it a lot on HBO.
Fantastic. That sounds like a great pairing with the Stepford Wives, either the original or the remake, by the way.
This one is very tongue-in-cheek. It's very kind of like a action rom-com kind of thing. So, yeah, really different take, but it's not dissimilar in theme because, of course, listen, spoiler warning, by the end of it, you're hanging out with Melanie Griffith, who is very competent and cool. He realizes that she would be a better companion than his robot. Spoilers.
He finds out humans are better than robots.
I know.
What?
At least better at being companions. Well, that about wraps up this animated discussion. Caleb, where can people go to continue the conversation with you?
Well, Joshua, you can always find me on Twitter talking about film, television, video games, and all sorts of other pop culture goodness at C Masters Talk. That's letter C Masters Talk. I'm also the editor-in-chief and film critic at the Cinematropolis, and we publish these in-depth essays on all types of different films, oftentimes including science fiction and superhero films, all the stuff you'd want to read about. And you can find all these articles at thecinematropolis.com. Joshua, what about you?
I'm also most active on Twitter, where you can find me easily enough at Joshua Unruh. And remember that an animated discussion is a Pulp Diction Productions program and is 100% supported by listeners like you. To find out how you can keep this and our other shows in production, check out patreon.com/pulpdictionproductions. Join us next time as we welcome back our very special guest, Alexandra Bohannon. She'll help us discuss bad girl shenanigans and queer subtext. We're jumping ahead to Season 2, Episode 28, Harley and Ivy. Until then, we'll see you back here. Same bat time, same bat channel.